we've found the contract between Columbus and the King of Spain, in which Columbus is not going to discover anything. He's going to be appointed as Viceroy of the Americas, which they weren't called the Americas, they were called lands on the other side of the ocean. So Columbus was not expecting to discover anything new. He was going to be Viceroy of the new lands which had already been discovered. And the same with Magellan. He didn't discover the Straits of Magellan. He had seen them on this map in the King of Portugal's library. So although I was taking a big gamble and historians could attack me, I knew that at the back of it all I was home and dry, because I could say, well, look, if you preach that Columbus discovered America and Magellan was the first to circumnavigate the world, how come that they set sail with maps? Magellan had a map of the world, Columbus had a map of the Americas. So whenever I was attacked, I just fell back on that, and I knew I was safe, and nobody could explain it. So I was absolutely sure one day we would find the world map, which the Chinese had given to the King of Portugal, and that's basically the subject of my second book, 1434, in which the map's been found, and I show it in that book.
What about for the skeptical groups of people who say, how do you make sure that the maps you found are authenticated, so to speak? I'm sure there's a domain in exploration where you have to authenticate or clarify that they are what they are.
Yes.
How did you do it, and how did you learn how to do it?
Well, I had quite an advantage, because I'd been a submarine captain, and I looked at land through a periscope, and you see what a sailor sees from a low deck, and that's not the same necessarily as what we see today with the aid of aerial photography and so on. So if you see something from low down in the sea, for example, if you see a group of islands in which in the foreground there are low islands and in the background there are high islands, it looks like a solid chunk of land. And some of the maps I could argue and show that what the cartographer was drawing were in fact groups of island, not solid land like in the Caribbean. So I knew a bit about maps. Now, nobody has ever challenged the main maps that I relied on when my first book was published. That is the map which Magellan had to go through the Straits of Magellan. That was a map called, his route has been reproduced on a map called the Jean Rots, Piri Reis, before he set sail. So the key maps, the key half dozen maps which I relied on, for Magellan's voyage, the Waldseemuller map; for Columbus' voyage, De Verga's map; for Magellan's voyage to South America, the Piri Reis. All of those maps were accepted as genuine. Nobody ever challenged their authenticity, and nobody ever has done. Now, I can say at that stage, well, look, you take Waldseemuller's map, which the Library of Congress owns, that was published in 1507, shows the Americas with great accuracy before Europeans reached them. Now, how on earth did Waldseemuller do that? He was a priest in a remote area of southeast France, which is famous for its plums, but he'd never seen the sea. He'd never been outside his France. So how on earth did this young priest draw a map of the Americas of 23,000 miles of coastline before Magellan, before Balboa, before the Europeans got there? I mean, it just doesn't make sense. So whereas the critics could attack me and say I was a non-entity, I wasn't a historian, and so on and so forth, I could say, well, okay, how do you explain these maps? And none of them could explain it. There was a deathly silence. So the public who read my book and read the attacks on me, realized something was completely wrong. It's idiotic to think Columbus discovered America if you can show that he had a chart, a map, showing how to get there, and that he was going there as the Viceroy of America rather than as an explorer. So the public accepted by about 99 to 1 that what I said made sense, and what traditional historians said was absolute nonsense. So it was actually quite an easy passage until we came to the stage when the world map, the Chinese world map, was discovered, the one which was given to the Pope, and who he gave it to the King of Portugal. When that map was found, everyone screamed, "This is a fake map." The map was a copy of a Chinese 1418 map, and it showed the Americas quite clearly. It showed Australia, it showed New Zealand, it showed the whole world drawn up in 1418. So there were screams of outrage from some historians who said it's a fake. And the reason they said it was a fake was because a number of the names on it were in Chinese writing, and they were in a script or describe things which were not in use in China in 1418. For example, they said some of the script was traditional Chinese, and that was only brought in 1949, so it's obviously a fake. Well, what we did is we assembled a team of linguistic experts who knew medieval Chinese, especially early Ming Dynasty Chinese, and they could show that although the critics were correct, some of these words were not in use in early Ming China. Nonetheless, they were in use in the provinces of southwest China amongst the Hui people. And not only that, some of them words were bastardized, Hui, of the Hui people who lived in Guangzhou. So we could say for sure that the cartographer was Chinese, he was a Hui minority, and he lived in Guangzhou. And that's exactly where the Admiral Zheng He came from. So we could show that every single attack on this 1418 map made by the critics who said it was fake because of this, that, and the other was quite the opposite. We could show not only is it not a fake, but that they didn't understand the language of the time. So we got over that hurdle, and I think now, well, from the emails we get, virtually everyone accepts that what I've written is in fact correct.
This is a real shakeup of history as we know it. It opens the domain for new exploration and expanded discovery. It also means, potentially, as a translation, that further examination needs to be done in terms of what we're being told is historical fact.
Yes.
And for people that need to know and need to have everything settled, yes, this is very unsettling, and for some it causes hysteria and a lot, they become irrational, and yes, I guess the more steeped in a religious point of view one is about something, a body of knowledge or anything, yes, when that is shaken, people become zealots sometimes. Yes, and I think that's what a part of the resistance is from. And I think also, Gavin, there's a sensitivity to, at least at this time in human history, the Chinese effectiveness, success, good fortune, and superiority. There's a sensitivity because the Chinese have done so well in so many things and really are now, and probably what you're showing us has always been front runners, explorers, discoverers, merchants for a long, long time.
Yes.
And that, it's not new. I
entirely agree with you on both your points. I think that one of the aspects which will require further detailed examination is how do historians get it so wrong?
Actually, that's what I was going to ask you next, which is kind of astonishing. Can you talk about that?
Yes, certainly. How are they so wrong? I think that the system of peer review is a disaster for historians. Peer review is the system whereby if you have a paper which breaks new ground in any way, then if you're a professional historian or professional biologist or whoever, then what you've got to do is you've got to put it up to review by your peers before it appears in a respectable magazine. So if you want to say, I think that Columbus wasn't the first to get America, then you've got to write a paper and get your fellow historians to look at it. And of course, they have hysterics, thinking that their life's work is going up in smoke. So there's no chance whatsoever of it ever seeing the light of day. So our approach has been exactly the opposite. We